Hi everyone, welcome all of you. Now we are going to learn about React component. React component, it is a very important concept to understand work with React. Actually, the React components are working independently. It may or may not receive props and return an HTML element or React element. Okay, first we can understand what is this component, why it has come into existence, and what is the benefit we can get with the help of the component. Earlier, what and the developer did, all those things we can learn in this video. Earlier, the developer needed to write thousands of code to develop a single page application, and any changes happening in that the thousands of line of code will be very challenging job. If any error comes, they have to go through the complete application to find out the error. Then they can do the needed corrections. I mean update. So it is a very challenging job, and we know that when the code is very lengthy, the maintenance of the code will also become a big job. So this was the situation before the component was implemented in React. So what is a component? Component is a logical group of data, logical group of code. That is component, logical group of component. That is, the application is divided into a number of components, and every component has its own the code, as well as it is working independently with other component. All components are working in the same space, but there is no interaction between these components. They are all independent. They may or may not receive props from the parent component, that we will see later. However, they are working independently, and they are merged with any parent component, that is called the application. Now the code has been split into a different logical group. Then the maintenance and the error debugging, everything will become, or the enhancement, everything will become somewhat easy nowadays. The React implements this kind of components in two ways. One is called a class component, and another one is function component. Function component is just a JavaScript function. It may or may not receive proper from its parent component, but it returns an HTML element or React element. This is the function component. So it returns only it receives a props, and it will return only information details. The props may contain the name of the person. Then the component which calls this the function component will supply the value for props, and that will be placed in the functional component. This is happening in the web page. So it is very simple, and it doesn't have its own state. State means data. It doesn't have its own state. So there is no burden of managing the state for the functional component. That is the reason it is called a stateless component. Stateless component. At the same time, another kind of component we are talking about is the class component. The class component is extending from the React component. The class component is extending from the React component, by which it can receive a constructor, and it can also having its own state. This is the data which is an array of JSON objects, and it contains its own data. It can be managed by the component itself. For example, here it is using this value. The value here it can be used here. You can use a number of li, and that will be displayed here. For simplicity, I have shown only the list of the value of class component. But at the same time, we can manipulate the data. Because of that manipulation, the web page will be changed. So that kind of things can also happen. So what is the difference between function component and a class component is, class component is able to manage its own data. It can manipulate or anything, and it may contain the complete data it needs, and that is the reason it is called a stateful component. And when it is extended from the React component, it also contains some kind of life cycle methods. There are plenty of life cycle methods that can be divided into different phases: initial phase, update phase, props receive phase, unmounting phase, like this. So every phase the class component can use to manipulate the state. In the initial phase, it can assign the initial value for all the state it is handling, and in the updating phase, because of some event, the component can update some kind of the state, and when it receives the props, that will be also accumulated in this. There are some number of methods under these phases, and that will be used to manipulate the data in class component. So the difference between functional component and the class component is, it is stateless, it is only used for the information purpose, and it is having a complete functionality. It can have its own data, and it can be manipulated. Because of this manipulated, the web page may contain dynamic changes. So this is very helpful to make any dynamic changes. So it is the way the functional components and the class components are divided. But while developing React application, whether we use function or class component, what is the best way to use either it is a class component or function component. But from 16.3 version, the React implements a concept called hooks. With the hooks, we can implement the state in functional component. That is, we can create any state. At the same time, that can also be manipulated with the help of hooks. One of the primary hooks is called the use state. Using this use state, we can create a state in function component. That is the syntax for creating a state in function component. Here, the count is a variable and it is a function. So it provides a variable that will hold the current value of the state, that is called count, that is the variable name, and it also provides another one, set count, that is a function, to change the value in the variable. This is the way the hook is giving use state as a way to change to provide the state to function component, and it can also give a function to manipulate the state. In this example, the initial value is assigned 1 as in the count variable, and after some point of time, if we want to increase, then we can give count plus 1. That is the way we can increase or we can manipulate the state in function component. So the count is the variable that holds the value, and the set count is a function that can manipulate the variable value. So this is the way we can give state to function component. So now we are able to provide a state, and that can be manipulated in the function, all those things. Now the function component is fully updated or be fully functional. So we can use the hooks to create the function component that can also act as a class component. So even though, what about the lifecycle methods? This is derived from the React component for the class component. This is not available for function component because it is not, the function components are not extended from the React component. So how we can manage the lifecycle? For lifecycle, we can also use another one hook that is called use effect. This is another one hook by which we can also manipulate the state in the functional component. We can manipulate the state in the functional component. Even though it is not having all the lifecycle methods of class component, most of the lifecycle methods are covered by the use effect, and the remaining will be also they are planning to implement. So using the use effect, we can also implement the life cycle methods in function component. So now we can come to the conclusion whether we can use function or class component. The class component is really a very well component that provide all the function and everything. It has its own and data, and that data can be manipulated, and that will take care of the dynamic changes in the web page. All those things the class component is doing, but at the same time the coding is not that much elegant in class component. We have to write a lengthy code, and that is not looking as elegant for the class component. But at the same time, with the help of hook, the functional component can also do most of the work the class component does. At the same time, the coding is very elegant. So it is recommended to use function component in any new components, or in the existing applications, or even we are developing a new application. It is recommended to function component over the class component, because the performance is also very good for function component, and it is because it is using hooks. The coding can be very easy, and any debugging is also we can do in an easy manner. And one more thing is the performance is also very good for the function component. So most of the applications we can use the function component. The class component may be required if we are working on the legacy application where the class components are implemented, or some of the life cycle methods. It is very rare situation. Some of the life cycle methods we need to implement in our application. In that case, we can use the class component. So for a conclusion, before introduction of the hooks, if we let us assume we create a function component that is a stateless. After some point of time, we realized that we needed a stateful component instead of the stateless component. Then in that situation, we needed to change the function component into class component to implement the state before the introduction of hooks. But now we can modify the function component if we want to add any state or manipulate the state. That is the easy way now. How the coding required is also minimum, and debugging is very easy. So most of the time we can use the function component. Thank you everyone. I think we can have something about the components that are used in React to improve the performance, as well as the development and the maintenance are made very easy with the help of component implementation. Thank you.